Using data from mobile phones that were on the ship, the families of the high school students on the Sewol have launched their own investigation into the sinking. Many families of the victims have declined generous donations, deferring to others they say are in greater need. And Japanese-American lawyers have joined with Koreans in the fight to preserve a California statue honoring Korean comfort women. Hello and welcome to News Today on KBS World. It's Thursday, May 8th. I'm Luke Clary. The families of Danwon High School students who perished in the Sewol sinking have launched their own investigation into the accident, recovering around 20 of the students' mobile phones to paint a clearer picture of what happened.
The Coast Guard is here. Do not move yet. This message was sent at 9:38, some 40 minutes after the ferry started tilting. This was the message from a passenger's mobile social network application. The message's timestamp indicates that it was sent when the ship was already listed. Based on this message, the families of the dead high school students claim that fatalities increased because the first responders were late in their rescue efforts immediately after the accident. In order to identify the cause of the accident, a coalition of the deceased students' families demanded authorities to disclose the entire process of the investigation. The parent group also declared that it would conduct its own investigation to uncover what really happened during the sinking. The parents have obtained around 20 students' mobile phones, but they said they would not turn them over to the investigative authorities and restore the videos and photos themselves to analyze what happened at the time of the capsizing.
검찰의 수사가 미진하거나 의혹이 있다고 판단될 경우 가능한 모든 방법을 동원하여 철저한 진상 규명을 위한 행동에 돌입할 것임을.
The family group is holding a silent protest and a petition drive at the Joy Memorial Hall to urge a complete disclosure of the truth involving the ferry disaster. Some 440,000 Koreans have visited the group memorial altar in Ansan, and roughly 1.45 million in all have paid their respects for the victims at the memorial hall set up around the nation.
In the wake of the ferry disaster, the opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy wants the National Assembly to head an investigation. The ruling Saenuri party says that at the moment, the search should be the priority.
The Saenuri party rejected the opposition's demand for a government-wide investigation into the Sewol ferry accident, arguing that the most important thing to focus on right now is the search operations.
그 사고 현장에 있는 사람들이 국정 조사장에 불려 나와야 되는 이런 문제가 있습니다. 그렇기 때문에 지금은 때가 아니다.
The ruling party said that since the prosecution and the police are already looking into the accident, they should wait for the current investigation's outcome before discussing the launch of a special probe. There are, however, some lawmakers even within the Saenuri party that are calling for a special investigation. Longtime member Kim Moo-sung said a governmental investigation should be launched after the accident has been dealt with. More reform-minded former party spokesman Kim Young-woo also pointed out that the party should accept a government-wide or special prosecutorial investigation. The opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy criticized that the ferry disaster had illustrated how Korean society is malfunctioning on all levels. The opposition party is blaming the government for its inadequate response in the early minutes of the accident, which made it so deadly. They also argued that now is the time to start looking into the truth, just as the bereaved families have demanded. They said that the National Assembly should step up to the plate since the government cannot be trusted.
정부에게만 맡겨놓고 있을 수는 없습니다. 정부의 무능과 무책임은 이미 국민들이 충분히 확인했기 때문입니다.
The opposition party is pushing for the parliamentary session to stay open in May, and that the National Assembly launches a government-wide probe in June.
While heartbreaking, the Sewol sinking has brought out some of the very best in Korean society. Even as people come together to make donations to the families of the victims, the bereaved often defer to those in greater need.
A group of college students raised money for the mother of Park Ji-young, a staffer of the sunken Sewol. Park died while trying to evacuate passengers from the ill-fated ferry. The donations were about $2,000, but Park's mother politely turned down the donations.
그 마음만은 그냥 고맙게 받겠고 이 성금은 고 박지영 씨 이름으로 다른 희생자에게 전달해달라고.
Park Ji-young was one of the first to rescue passengers when the ship was going down to the sea. Park's mother added that her daughter would have worked to take care of other victims and their families if she was still alive. So the donations were given to a 7-year-old boy who lost both his parents and an older brother during the sinking. However, the boy's relatives also turned down the donations, saying that the money should be spent for other victims.
이게 착하지 않습니까? 그 어린 학생들 이렇게 조금씩 모아가지고 돌려드려서 다시 다른 분한테 드릴 거거든요.
The boy's relatives only received a letter from the students. After reading the letter, the boy even consoled others, saying that his parents would be in heaven now. Despite their sorrow and grief, the families are reaching out to those who are in more difficult situation. Their acts are warming the hearts of people in the wake of the tragedy.
Japanese-American lawyers have joined Koreans in the fight against a lawsuit brought by a right-wing Japanese group to remove a statue in California honoring comfort women. Here's the story.
The Japanese-American Bar Association has denounced a lawsuit seeking to remove a statue in California honoring women who were forced into wartime sexual slavery by Japan during World War II. The Japanese-American lawyers issued a joint statement with the Korean-American Bar Association. In the statement, they criticized the lawsuit's plaintiff for distorting history and overlooking the Kono Statement, which acknowledged the Japanese military's responsibility for wartime sexual slavery. The Japanese-American lawyers also expressed concerns that the lawsuit would cause a conflict among ethnic groups and hurt the foundation for multi-ethnic communities in the U.S. The Japanese-American lawyer's statement says the Korean-American Forum of California was right in opposing the lawsuit from the stance that it is a universal humankind issue, not a conflict between Korea and Japan.
글렌델시의 소송은 재미일본인 중국인들, 태국, 필리핀, 월남 이런 분들과 함께 연대해서 이 문제를 강력하게 대응해 나가도록 하겠습니다.
The Japanese-American Bar Association's opposition puts the lawsuit's plaintiff, a Japanese ultra-right organization, in a catch-22 situation. U.S. congressional leaders visited the statue to pay respects. A famous law firm refused to represent the lawsuit's plaintiff in the case.
The credit scores of Korean teenagers and people in their 20s have deteriorated sharply since the 2008 financial crisis. Young people are finding difficulty paying off their student loans due to high unemployment.
Hu Hye-ji has been on an academic leave for nearly a year. She now works at a coffee shop. She earns around $880 a month and saves most of her salary for her next college semester. Even though she can make a living by taking academic leaves, she has no choice but to get student loans until the time she graduates from college.
취업 후에 갚는다고 해도 그 금액이 작은 금액이 아니다 보니까 생각하면 깝깝한 면이 없지 않아 있죠. 사실 많죠.
Some 400,000 students have to receive loans from the Korea Student Aid Foundation every semester. In 2009, the amount of student loans recorded around $7.1 billion, but in just 4 years it surpassed $11 billion. The delinquency rate of student loans stood at 3.25% last year, which was more than 3.5 times the delinquency rate for home loans provided by commercial banks. As a result, the credit ratings of teenagers and people in their 20s went down at a very sharp rate. Among teenagers, the median credit score was 3.96 in the first quarter of 2008, but in just 5 years, it plunged to 5.44. As for those in their 20s, their credit score was the worst among all the age groups, recording 5.58.
청년축의 신용등급 하락은 향후에 정상적인 금융활동을 사전적으로 제약할 소지가 있어서 문제가 될 수 있고요.
Young Koreans are feeling more and more financial pressure because of the tight job market and their inability to pay off their loans.
With tourism on the rise in Korea, people are listening to the complaints of overseas visitors. For the Chinese, it's the language barrier. For Japanese, it's the pressure to buy.
Myeongdong is a shopping haven for foreign tourists in Korea. Finding directions and communicating with locals are a couple of the biggest challenges for the overseas visitors. About 57% of Chinese tourists cited language barrier as the most inconvenient part of their travels in Korea.
Restaurant, like having lunch and breakfast or coffee, is a bit hard to communicate.
As for Japanese tourists, they don't like being pressured into buying products when shopping in Korea.
偽物の時計いりませんかって言われました。でも私いらないって言ったんだけど、バッグでも何でも偽物。
The lack of signs, exuberant prices, and poor service were also found to undermine Korea's reputation as a shopping paradise. Both Chinese and Japanese tourists picked Myeongdong as their favorite shopping locale, but their second most popular shopping destination was different. The Chinese preferred Dongdaemun, which has medicinal herb markets, while the Japanese picked Namdaemun because it sells diverse dried seafood products.
자주 방문하는 지역을 중심으로 안내 표시판을 마련한다거나 아니면은 관련된 관광 안내 책자를 좀 더 많이 구비를 해서
As some 12 million foreign tourists visited Korea last year, the tourism industry is calling on the retail sector to develop services that cater specifically to foreigners.
May 8th is Parents' Day in Korea, and around this time of year, we often hear heartwarming stories of grown-up children taking care of their elderly parents. Let's take a look.
Yoon Sang-gi has been working for a local government for 32 years now. The first thing he does when he comes back from work is preparing a meal for his mother-in-law suffering from Alzheimer's disease. He also brushes her hair and keeps talking to her. He's been looking after his ailing mother-in-law and his own mother for the past 10 years. His mother passed away last year after suffering from brain lesion, but his filial love did not end then.
자식으로서 할 도리를 하는 거지 그 이상 그 이하도 아닙니다. 자식으로서 당연히 모시고 돌아가실 때 편안하게 모시는 게 자식된 도리라 생각하고 있어요.
Mr. Yoon and his wife have watched and fed the ill mother, even cleaning her up after she sold herself. Their 4 children are following their example and helping with the care of their grandmother.
할머니 다 목욕시켜 닦아드리고 그럴 정도로 애들이 잘했기 때문에 제가 조금 힘들었어도 아이들 또 애기 아빠가 많이 협조를 해줘서
Mr. Yoon will receive the Presidential Award on Parents' Day for his exemplary conduct and steadfast love for his mother and mother-in-law.
Art can have a spiritual or healing effect that can't be ignored. An exhibition with this express purpose in mind has recently opened in Korea.
This exhibition hall features tables of various colors and patterns. A closer look shows that they were made from different pieces. This large work of art was made with old signboards and closets. These exhibits were made by piecing together the debris from the tsunami-ravaged areas in eastern Japan, which was hit by a deadly earthquake in 2011. By giving the debris a new use, the artist wanted to send a message that life goes on even after the tragedy.
내가 쓰던 사물 혹은 내가 있었던 곳, 내가 지나다니던 길, 이게 정말 한순간에 이제 부서졌잖아요. 그런 것들을 가져와서 조금 더 이제 사실은 치유하는 목적도
This work of art features yellow pumpkins dotted with black spots. The spotted pattern is repeated endlessly in a room surrounded by mirrors. The creator of these works, Yayoi Kusama, says for a long time she had suffered from hallucinations in which she saw overlapping spots and other objects.
점에 대한 강박, 환영 등을 예술로서 승화시켜서 누구도 흉내낼 수 없는 독창적인 자신의 작품 세계로 펼친 작가입니다.
These exhibits help the artists and visitors heal their pain in times of sorrow.
Shopping can be a chore, and when you're already busy, who has the time? This might be the perfect solution for those who'd rather stay at home. A customized shopping delivery service. This office worker in her 20s receives a package of cosmetic products once a month. The box is filled with assorted makeup items, but surprisingly, she selected none of these products herself. The cosmetics company made the decisions for her.
계속 일을 하다 보니까 밖에서 화장품을 제가 못 사니까 전문가들이 오히려 이렇게 알아서 보내줘서 편하게 받아보고 그래서 좋아요.
How did the company decide which products to send her? This company sends cosmetic packages to 230,000 customers once a month. When a new season is about to begin, company experts decide the colors and functions of hundreds of new items. A monthly bundle is composed of 6 to 8 regular-sized products and samples. Customers pay about $15 a month to receive this package.
저희는 이제 항상 저희 팀에서 트렌드를 분석을 하고 그리고 분석팀이 있어서 소비자들의 만족도라든지 원하는 제품들에 대한 그런 설문조사를 바탕으로 저희가 제품을 선택을 하기 때문에 만족도는 굉장히 높은 편입니다.
This is much like subscription commerce, which has its roots in newspaper and magazine subscription. Proxy shopping is a boon for homemakers as well. This farm in central Korea grows lettuce, mustard green, celery, and other leafy vegetables. These vegetables are earmarked to be sold to a produce delivery service.
일단은 저희가 농가와 계약 재배를 할 때에는 농장 주인들께서 농사 짓는 거를 저희가 살펴보고 계약 재배를 하는데요. 그 선별된 거를 저희가 가지고 와서 또 2차 선별을 거칩니다.
The company selects only the freshest and most seasonal vegetables from some 50 farms around the country for its produce package.
이거는 제주도에서 올라온 콜라비, 전남 무안에서 올라온 양파고요. 전북 남원에 감자가 햇감자가 올라와 있습니다.
You might think most customers would like to see and feel for themselves the things they buy beforehand. But surprisingly, many customers are relieved that they don't have to bother with shopping. Customized shopping delivery allows people to get their hands on what they need without the hassle of shopping. Though convenient, there are drawbacks.
이러한 상거래는 소비자의 편의성은 극대화된 반면에 소비자가 원하지 않는 상품을 배송받을 수 있기 때문에 소비자의 선택권이 제한된다는 단점이 있습니다. 소비자는 처음에 계약을 하실 때 이용 약관이라든지 중간에 계약 해지는 가능한지 위약금은 어떤지 약관을 좀 꼼꼼히 살펴보시고 거래를 하시는 게 좋겠습니다.
Customized proxy shopping has given consumers the freedom not to choose. This is the latest trend in modern consumption. And now we'll take a look at the markets, followed by the world weather. And that's it for this edition of News Today. We'll see you again at the same time tomorrow. Have a great day.